Like, this is equivalent to likening the U.S. economy to a household average American income of $44,000 a year, but we're racking up $400,000 worth of debt, and we're saying, you know what? It would be really great for us to try to solve some of the climate issues. So let's go deeper into debt for that. I know that that's not important in this moment, but let's do it anyway. And you know what, for that matter, let's go buy a lot of other things that we can't afford and go even deeper into debt. Any household that does that would wind up bankrupt on the streets with nothing.
We've been talking politics more lately. I feel like on the YouTube channel,
I hate it.
And on different places,
I hate it because we have to.
Politics, but that's what I was going to say is we have to,
yeah.
Because these are things that impact investors big time. And over the weekend and over the past week, some crazy stuff has gone down, and I just want your take on it. So you can tell me if you have thoughts on the following headlines, or you don't have thoughts, or you're like, pass, don't care, this isn't a big deal, or if you think it's a big deal. Okay?
I actually think that politically what's happening right now in the media is a huge deal. And I'm not talking about Republican versus Democrat. I'm looking at what we're spending money on. I'm like, are we spending money on the right thing? Are we focusing on the right things? Are we helping the right people? Like, are we relevantly connected to the real needs of America today? And I got to be honest, usually when there's a recession, there's a lot of fear, consumer confidence is down. But beyond that, I just feel like people are scared at the direction of the country because things have never felt so socialistic. They certainly don't feel capitalistic. The government's saying what you can and can't do, and now everyone's like, well, send me my money. I mean, I lived for 2 years in a socialistic country. I know what that feels like. I also lived in a communistic country, and I know what that feels like, and I don't like the way I feel in America right now.
Biden's COVID relief, 1.9, oh, come on, let's call it what it is, $2 trillion.
$2 trillion, the beginning of what? What is this going to be, a $20 trillion a spend or $40 trillion spend? I mean,
I thought it was really interesting, Kris, that they went the route that we see in, grocery stores and retail stores where you don't buy something for $10, it is $9.99.
No.
Because psychologically it'll
right.
be easier to swallow 1.9 trillion rather than 2 trillion. But let's call it for what it is. $2 trillion relief plan, and it is facing bipartisan pushback. Thoughts on the relief plan? Is 1.9 trillion what we need right now?
Well, first of all, I hate having a federal government that is enacting this recession and that is trying to solve all of its problems, because part of me just says, hey, let us live and give states more power to their personal sovereignty and let them figure this thing out. And I don't feel like that's what's happening right now. I made a video on YouTube about the moratorium being brought back for the next 60 days, which frankly, I think is going to be back for probably 6 months, 12 months. I don't actually know when it's going to go away because I think it's going to hang out for a really long time. And at least Biden is saying, hey, let's create a stimulus package that can get money to people that can't pay their rent so that they can at least give it to the landlords. So we're trying to solve the landlords' problems. Like, I thought that was really good. We did not have that with the last moratorium. I think Trump just said, hey, go on faith that it's only going to be till the end of the year. It's a 4-month stint and you just got a deal. And at least there's some money there, but frankly, it was a really small amount, like $25 billion, which is nothing compared to a $1.9 trillion bill.
So I've got some really interesting statements from a few senators on this, but I wanted to mention trillion. I think that number is so big.
I don't think people can fathom how big it is.
We really don't know it. Like,
no. And let's be honest. We're not spending money in the bank.
Right.
We're spending money we don't have. In fact, we're just creating money. And here's this notion. One of the things that sucks about a 4-year term president is that you can pretty much do anything that you want as long as the House will pass the bill and as long as it gets pushed through, and you don't have to really reap the consequences. It's really hard for a president to do something that they can claim as a benefit they created in a 4-year period of time. And when it comes to spending money, they almost never have to pay that bill. That bill won't come due till the next president, the president after, and at some point, someone's going to hit with hyperinflation. We're all going to suffer because we printed so much money, we invented so much money supply to solve now problems that, yeah, maybe it addresses some of the problems today, but I'll be honest, I don't see a lot of that money going out into the hands of the people. I see a lot of that money going towards things that I think are disconnected and don't really matter right now. And yeah, if we keep signing multi-trillion-dollar spend bills, at what point does that come back to haunt us? Eventually it has to.
I mean, it's in the hands of China. I mean, that's where we're borrowing a lot of this from, is from China. They're the one backing these loans. Because you're right, money doesn't just come from nowhere. That's not how it works, and we have to avoid hyperinflation. But let me ask you this, Kris. Stimulus. First off, what is it to the layman? Why are we talking stimulus? Why is that the term they're using? And what's it trying to achieve?
When the economy gets broken, you got to do something to re-stimulate it and restart it. And there's only a couple of control levers that the Fed has. One is rates. Push rates now beyond their 50-year all-time low. And what will that do? That'll encourage people to go out and buy real estate. And that really stimulates the economy in a really huge way. Stimulus is also free money or paying off debt. So it's either eliminating liabilities or it's giving you an asset. It's giving you money and hoping that maybe that helps solve some of the problem. And right now I feel like we're being peed on a little bit. Because it's like, hey, here's $1,400, that hopefully will take care of you for the next 6 months. I'm like, well, dude, you realize that we're still down 10 million jobs from where we're at. Like, what are you doing to help those people?
We're totally going to get into this conversation, Kris, of how far does $1,400 go, and what you should really be doing. But I've got an interesting statement here from Mitt Romney. This one should hit home because he's the senator from our state, from Utah, and he's got an interesting perspective. He's seen as one of the Republicans that is willing to compromise, which Biden is pushing for, trying to have more bipartisan policies that go through Congress. But here's what Mitt Romney says. How has the first $900 billion we just passed a couple of weeks ago, how has that been distributed? Most of it hasn't yet. And then he goes on to say, it's important we don't borrow hundreds of billions, actually trillions of dollars from the Chinese for things that are not absolutely necessary. This is a time to act with prudence and care. Agree, disagree?
Agree completely. Like, this is equivalent to likening the U.S. economy to a household average American income of $44,000 a year, but we're racking up $400,000 worth of debt, and we're saying, you know what? It would be really great for us to try to solve some of the climate issues. So let's go deeper into debt for that. I know that we don't really, that's not important in this moment, but let's do it anyway. And you know what, for that matter, let's go buy a lot of other things that we can't afford and go even deeper into debt. Any household that does that would wind up bankrupt on the streets with nothing. And that's kind of what the U.S. is doing.
Well, and there's a game in this whole thing because a lot of different senators and congressmen, they've got things that they're trying to achieve in office as well.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when a big thing like this is happening, they tack on things that they're trying to get done, and that's how agreements are made, and there's some wheeling and dealing and negotiating.
I'll
scratch your back.
The last $2 trillion bill, while Trump was still in office, had the most ridiculous, crazy things written into the bill. I'm like, dude, aren't we trying to help people suffering? How come almost none of the money is going towards that? How come everything else is going towards projects that, who gives a rip? I mean, right now, the biggest problem that I'm having is, achieving financial independence at the age of 26. It came down to having a basic understanding of budget. I had to control my spending, I had to control my budget, and I had to have leftover money to invest. I took my investments, and the goal was simple. Warren Buffett said it best. He says, if you're not making money while you sleep, you'll never be rich. Like, you're never going to achieve any level of financial independence unless your money works for you. And unfortunately, most people don't know this. Most people are they're consumers. They're just spending their money. They're trying to keep up with the Joneses. They're trying to have nicer houses, nicer cars, nicer things. They're trying to make sure they can manage their credit card debts. They'd love it if the government would pay for their student loans. But meanwhile, we complain, well, the rich are getting richer. Well, first of all, the middle class are poor because they do what poor people do. They spend money they don't have. Rich people, they simply have the discipline to take money they've worked their ass off for, and then they invest it. And then they expect that money to produce something for them. And ironically, rich people are not saying, oh yeah, let's invest in the S&P 500 and get an average 30 or 8% return. They're not saying, let's put money in like a 401k. That'll be great for retirement. Rich people are not doing what poor people do. Rich people are buying businesses. They're buying real estate. They're buying assets that make them money. And the middle class and the poor continue this trend of buying things they can't afford. I hate it when people want to have the conversation of the rich versus the poor. I'm like, listen, anyone has the ability to save money and invest it, even if it's just an extra $10. When I started my journey towards financial independence, I was 21 years old. I was a full-time student, I had a full-time job, and I hated my life. I'd newly married, wanted to just spend all the time in the world with this woman. I didn't have time to because I was 5 a.m. getting ready for college and taking my 18 course credits, or I was in the afternoon working all evening, sometimes till 9 p.m. at night. And I didn't have much of a family life. I didn't have time for me and my sweetheart. And that's because I was doing my best to be responsible. But after all that work, I was still going into debt. I couldn't keep up even then at that time. And that's when it really hit me like a ton of bricks. The only way I'm ever going to free myself from this rat race is if I get my money to work for me. And it took me 14 months to save up $5,000, a piddly amount of money, but to me was everything. Because when you're poor going in debt, dude, $5,000 was a ton. But I was careful. In over 4.5 years, I invested that $5,000. And in 4.5 years, I grew it to $1.6 million, a 6-figure residual income. And I had the luxury now of quitting my job because I wasn't buying luxury things. I had freed myself from this rat race. And then I just kept multiplying my wealth because I now learned the game of money. I learned that it has rules. I learned that I needed to go for superior, less risky ROIs. And as I started making more money, then I could increase my lifestyle. I think rich people do it inverted than poor people. They basically say, I'm going to delay gratification on what I want in this moment so that 5 or 10 years from now, I can have anything that I want. I wish the US economy would work that way as well.
So most of the pushback that is coming against this $2 trillion stimulus, even from Democrats on the other side of the aisle, that should be favoring their president's, stimulus package, they're pushing back because they're saying there's not enough targeting. Jill Manchin, Democrat from West Virginia, says we've done an awful lot of that, of putting money into the hands of people that don't need it, that are just going to put it in savings. Like I have to raise my hand, like this last stimulus check that my wife and I got.
Why are we giving that to people that have jobs?
You know what I did with it?
What'd you do?
I put it into savings. It's just sitting there.
No,
and eventually it'll build up and
I'm really curious. Why would we give $1,400 to people that have jobs? How about just take the 9.8 missing million jobs that people lost and give a lot more money to those, help those people. Or, by the way, if they're on unemployment and that's working and that's taking care of them, then don't send them any money at all. Let the system work, but why go into all this debt? I looked at the PPP that was passed. I had one of my businesses that I could have gotten hundreds of thousands of dollars for, but I didn't take it. I didn't need it. I wasn't negatively impacted. I had another business that the government decimated and said I couldn't do. You better bet I took my money for that and then, put it towards the business. That made sense. Unfortunately, there's a lot of things in this bill that don't make sense.
So you would agree then with Joe Manchin that targeting is the problem. That we need to get money to the people who actually need it.
Get the money to the people that need it. Don't do these blanket sweep. Oh, well, and I think what partially creates that is we don't want anyone to feel bad. Right now, there's such a sensitivity to leaving nobody out. There's so much sensitivity around the idea of well, if we don't give it to everyone, then people are going to complain and feel like victims because why shouldn't they get their piece too? And I think that it is such a mistake when we cater to that level of victimhood because we're empowering people to find significance in what doesn't work.
Eviction moratorium. Let's pivot it here a little bit. This one is definitely affects real estate people, and there's a number of videos on YouTube talking about crashes coming and the eviction moratorium. It's really bad for landlords. Who's protecting the landlords?
Scariest thing that happened, I think, in 2020 was in September when the CDC came out and basically said, we're going to put a moratorium on all evictions. Now, by the way, I don't disagree with it. I actually think, if the government says that you have the right to work, but we're not going to let you because of this government-forced recession, because we got the flu bug that's worse than normal. I don't want to minimize that because people have been hurt by it, but come on, dude, let's call this thing for what it is. It is not the bubonic plague. It's not the Spanish flu. So you take a look at this problem, and basically September last year, Trump said for the next 4 months, you can't evict anyone if they can't pay the rents. By the way, you can evict them if they're not following any other part of their contracts, like if they're being too loud or having parties, if they're destroying the property, if they're physically abusing people. Dude, kick them out all you want, but you can't kick them out because they lost a job and they can't pay the rent. Listen, I agree with that. I think that was the right thing to do. It did not make me as a real estate owner super thrilled, because I wanted to know, how's this going to play out? We fared better certainly than most, but Trump said this is ending at the end of the year. Biden comes into office, day one, the first thing that he does is he says for the next 60 days, we're reopening the moratorium. And there's no way in 60 days he's not going to renew it again.
Yeah, he's already talked about getting Congress to push it through September, so it'll be a full year.
Yeah, so this is just going to keep going. It's and the problem with that merry-go-round, the good news is that if the stimulus bill actually goes to give money to the landlords so that the rent does in fact get paid, then great. I totally get it, and I think that is a targeted solution. If it doesn't work, if there's a lineup and the money can't get to the landlords, and if landlords suffer because, as a result, then, that's really, really, really piss poor politics.
There was a comment on our video that we shared on YouTube about this, Kris, that I wanted to share. Okay, here we go. You're going to love this. It's cold. Responded to the eviction moratorium video, all about, landlords and the hard position it puts them in. No investment is without risk. You made the choice to buy properties you didn't need and in many cases could not afford without someone else helping pay it. You knew there were risks. Now you're reaping what you've sown. The mortgage defaulting and the credit problems you will face now are the universe paying you back for all the people you've done the same to.
You know what? That is, I'm telling you right now, I love, anytime I get into a live room and I talk about poor and rich, you better believe it. I have found, listen, people always assume that rich people are proud, they're arrogant, they're stuffy, that their snobbery is through the roof. I gotta tell you, first of all, there's way more poor people, and the pride of the poor far outweighs the pride of the rich. I mean, some of the coolest people I've ever met, people of influence and people of money and people of power, are people that worked their butt off to come from nothing, become self-made, and now they're doing greater good in the world than the takers. When you're poor, and that's because that's where you're at in life, that's how almost every single one of us starts. That's where I started. And I call that the selfish life, because everything that you do is about you. Everything is about taking care of your own. It's food for me. It's shelter for me. It's making sure that my bills get paid. And you know what? That's okay. That's where people are at. But the people that have the wherewithal to invest in themselves, to get mentors, to seek higher education and become empowered, hopefully enter into a game of more, not so they can just improve their lifestyle, but because we are fully capable of being a part of a greater solution. That's where I have all these friends that have all this extra money that are doing all this really extra good in the world. I love telling people, go for wealth, go for abundance, and don't make it all about you. Like, there's a greater good to serve, but you can't do that if you're living the selfish life. When people start making more money than they need, they at least have the option of entering the selfless life. They're either going to spend all that money on themselves, or some will go to them and some will go to other people that they can help. And they at least have the option of helping others when everyone else is financially trapped. We need greater financial literacy in this country, and frankly, all over the world. That's what this channel is about. That's what all of my channels are about. They're helping empower people to realize that no government is responsible. You're responsible. The onus is on you to live your amazing life. So when I hear that comment, I'm like, oh, I am so familiar with that rhetoric. This is the sourpuss, poor person who says the world owes me a living and someone has crapped all over my dreams and my life plans. I'm like, you just can't see your own victimhood. You can't see it. I get it. Some of it wasn't dished up. So, some of it, someone did to you. Maybe it was where you were born or how you were raised, or maybe it was abuse or something that was kind of put on you. My question is, how did you react to that? What did you do with that? Did you feed that? Did you feed that wolf? And did you turn it into your identity? Or did you choose to overcome it? Because I remember the most painful moment in my life was when I came home and walked in on my wife with tears in her eyes. And these were the kind of tears I'd never seen before. We'd only been married 4 months. We had dated for a year. And I said, Glenn, what's wrong? And she said, Kris, we have tuition due in 3 weeks and can't pay it. And I thought, well, is that really what these tears are about? She said, Kris, we have rent due in 5 days and we already spent this Friday's paycheck. And that's when I realized, oh, she's really scared about us running out of money. And then she told me this. I went shopping today and I filled up my grocery cart with 5 days worth of food the way I always do. And when I went out to the checkout stand, the check bounced. And I was embarrassed and I didn't know what to do. So I just literally left my cart and I left the store empty-handed. When I came home, I found my wife hungry. Our cupboards were literally empty. And my wife was crying because I didn't have food in our home for lunch. And that's when I realized I'm either going to become a financial failure, I'm going to succumb to this powerful voice within that says, you can't do it. You're not man enough. You're not big enough. You're not going to figure it out. It's too big of a problem to solve. But I took that pain and I consecrated it differently. I said, I will never be in this situation again. I will make any choice I need to that is morally good or legal. And I will make sure that I create a life for my wife, my family, my future children, so that we never have to feel this way again. And that's what I did over the next 4 years. So yeah, I mean, that comment right there, it reeks of insane levels of financial victimhood. You reap what you sow. You took the risk. It was all on you. I'm like, come on, dude, look at the last several hundred years. When has there been a political stunt so big that not even tenants were responsible for paying their mortgage? Like, this is definitely outside the box. In my 18 years of real estate, I would have never conceived of a financial circumstance where this could happen. And here we are. And so the one thing that's right about that comment that I like, is there a name to that comment?
Yeah.
Yeah, give me the person's name.
Eric Weldon Schilling.
So I just want to say for our friend Eric out there, you are right. The onus is on anyone that ever makes the investment, and the risk is 100% theirs for everything they can see and everything they cannot. However, unfortunately, taking that comment and bringing it to this ultra negative energy of you probably screwed someone else over and everyone else over to even get here. So guess what? This is karma. If you own real estate, by the way, that you're not living in, this is bad karma. This is the universe telling you that you're an asshole. And I'm like, guess what, Eric? You're projecting your own assholeness.
So, Eric, dear Eric, do you also realize that there are people who cannot afford to buy homes but do need a place to live? Therefore, they do need someone who can afford multiple homes in order to be able to rent stuff out to other people.
Dude, it's a symbiotic relationship, man. We all need each other. 30% of the country doesn't own a home. That trend over the next decade, at least pre-COVID, was designed to go up to 40%. Single family has now become obviously really hot. That might reverse that trend. But basically a third to up to in the next decade, 40% of homes need to be bought and owned by something for the people that can't. We need each other.
All right, Kris, Eviction Moratorium. There's plenty of information on that on our YouTube channel for anybody that's interested. Next issue. Biden on his to-do list of 100 things he wants, or the things he wants to do in his 100 days.
Dude, I hope you're not going to bring up what I think you're about to bring up.
We are. Raise minimum wage to $15 an hour.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, like, I heard this and I was just thinking, great. So let me just make sure you understand. We want to basically now have the federal government mandate a minimum for everyone, no matter where you live in America. And in most places, you know, you're looking at $7, $8, $9. So basically doubling incomes, bringing it up to a minimum of $15 an hour. And here's the thought. That is going to help people that earn lower wages, because here's his platform. He says, let's make sure no one is earning money below the poverty line. That's what it's all about. Make sure you don't earn money below the poverty line. And automatically, I'm just sitting here and I've got my first few thoughts just running through my head. First of all, I'm a business owner and I want to pay people the market going rate that people are willing to pay. And even though I love to pay people well, guess what? Guess who runs fast food chains a lot of the times? Teenagers. Dude, taking some of these young people and spoiling them with $15 an hour, to me just seems just a little bit stupid. But I gotta be honest, that's not my first concern. You know what my first concern is? Let's shut more businesses down. Does President Biden understand that the average business survives on a 10% margin? Like, well, what does that mean, Kris? It means that when they bring in $1 of revenue, they keep a dime. That means that if that business wants $100,000 of profits, it has to do $1 million in revenue. And by the way, a company that is doing $1 million in revenue has multiple employees. And if at the end of the day, like there's not even $100,000 left to share, 86% of business owners, as it is, make less than $100,000 a year. The average entrepreneur that owns a business, $46,000 a year. They're making $5,000 less than the average person graduating college. Less than 2% of business owners are making over $1 million a year. 50% of our nation's GDP rests on the backbone of business. So why are we trying to hurt the business owners? I promise you this, if you raise that minimum wage, if you bring that minimum wage up to $15, we are going to have a slew of businesses that are basically just shutting down and going out of business. They're going to have to raise their prices, by the way, and guess what that does? That forces all Americans to be taxed with more money, and if they're not willing to pay that tax, that business is going to have to close its doors. So I ask the people that are currently earning $12, $13, $14 an hour, $10 an hour, would you rather have your job, which for many of these people is the most they've ever made based on their education and whatever else, they might be really grateful for that job. Would you rather have your job at $12 an hour or lose your job because your business can't afford to pay you $15 an hour? What service are we doing then? How are we helping people then? I think one of the things that I love is getting a president that understands the economics of business, because running a country is really complicated. If you can't run a business, you're really going to struggle with grappling how to understand running an economy of a country. And right now, this just makes, I just chalk it up as stupid. It makes stupid all day long. It's nothing but stupid. And so I'm just like, great. So you're going to tax the people. You're going to have companies raise their prices. They won't be able to pay for their employees. And we're just going to shut down a bunch more businesses. So then GDP suffers. And guess what happens to unemployment? It goes up. This is all in favor of a socialistic country. That's what that is. That's just basically saying, let's take the power away from the people to produce for themselves. Let's raise the standards so high with ideals and thresholds that we can't survive by, so that when people lose their jobs, guess what happens? The government has to take care of us. And you know what? That reduces ambition. I lived in a country that had 30% unemployment. And I'm going to tell you right now, when you talk to those people, were they trying to get jobs? No, they say, well, listen, if I worked 40 hours a week, I'll make a little bit more money than if I had a job. I would rather just the government send me my check and I can just live life on my terms. What happens when you have an idolatrous nation, meaning people that are lazy, people that aren't incentivized to work? What happens when motivation goes out the window? I think this stops being America. It certainly stops being a land of opportunity, because we got too many cooks in the kitchen that don't have interest in really serving the people. They're too busy serving themselves or creating ideals that won't be sustainable.
Senator King from Maine said this quote about the stimulus, but I think it applies here too. And I think it's just great. He just said, this isn't monopoly money. I mean, because the Fed can print more money, it seems like, oh yeah, we need more, let's just print it. But this has to have repercussions. Would you agree?
I hate the system that says, we need money to go to these people and we need your vote. And that person says, unless the bill includes what I want, I won't give you what you want. And now, instead of being unified, we have everyone scratching each other's backs, and less than 10% of the bill is going where it needs to go. The other 90% is just scratching everyone else's back for projects, by the way, that are not relevant to what we really need right now.
Student loans. That's another thing that Biden wants to shift in his first 100 days. Student loans. Currently, there is a pause on student loans, including interest and payments on federal loans, through September.
Yeah, it's stupid. It's not targeted. Give me a student that graduated and got a job, make them pay their student loans. They took on that debt, they chose to get educated. You make them an honest man or woman by making them make that payment. Someone that graduated college and a job wasn't there for them, dude, help them out. If you've hurt the economy, government, so that it's harder for them to get a job, then help them out.
So it comes back to the whole conversation of targeting.
It does. It's like help the right people and don't help the wrong people. These mistakes are way too expensive, by the way. The repercussions of these, someone's eventually gonna have to pay the bill, and it's not a president, and it's not the politicians. It's you and it's me. We get to fit the bill for these choices.
$15,000 tax credit for first-time home buyers. You for or against?
I actually respect what's happening here. Home ownership is a big deal. When you take a look at a person's life and at retirement, where they have stashed money, they'll put all this energy into their 401k and their IRA. Guess where they usually have the largest balance of equity, their largest savings for retirement? It's the equity in their home. I think that we should be pushing home ownership. I think that we should do everything that we can. But if you read deeper into the bill, he's actually pushing certain minorities to get the benefits of home ownership. And while also that's okay, because I believe that everyone should own a home. Like I'm a huge, I believe that's important for every one of us. The question is that $15,000 actually going to make a difference? And I argue that it doesn't.
No.
Because guess what happens when you buy a house? You get to depreciate that property. And if you look at the depreciation, that depreciation already produces a huge tax benefit. All you're doing is adding tax benefit on people that don't need a tax benefit. If you're trying to help people that make $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year buy their first home and you think that the stimulus will help them do it, they're not paying taxes. Like, comment below. Tell me, if you make less than $40,000, $50,000 a year, reveal what you paid in taxes. After you write off your kids and you write off this and you write off the depreciation of your home, you don't have to pay anything. Why are we stacking up tax benefits that people can't use? And when I see that, Carson, I just got to tell you, that's when the full-blown idiocy really presents itself. I'm like, wow, you have no idea what you're really doing. Like, I understand what you're trying to do, but do you realize that mathematically, to the penny, you are not producing any benefit for this person with this bill? Do you realize that this will not actually benefit people? Tax breaks are for people that pay taxes. Why are you giving tax breaks to people that don't pay taxes? It's stupid.
What is the real barrier then to people getting?
No, dude, listen, if the goal is help people buy a home, then a much more practical application would be, hey, we've put a special government-based grant together for people in these sectors, industries, or low income, and we're gonna help you with your down payment. That's always existed. That's smart. It's targeted. It's helping the right people. They don't need tax benefits. They're not paying taxes. These people need help getting into a home, and it takes money to be able to do that.
Wow. Kris, let's pivot a little bit here. So I believe that we should be involved, we should be informed, we should vote smart, and we should push things in the right direction. But at some point, we got to stop relying on the power of other people to make our lives what it is. You agree? There's
more of that happening right now than ever before, because I think 2020 was almost chalked up as wait and see.
Yep.
Don't wait.
Yep.
And it was really like, for me, I was checking out the news yesterday, and all of these articles are starting to come out about the new strains, right? Every year there's going to be mutations, and the Wall Street Journal came out with this article, and they said, well, listen, the CDC is now coming out and suggesting that we're going to need new vaccines every single year. We're going to have to modify old vaccines. They're like, it's not a big deal, but you should get used to annual vaccines for the COVID year over year over year. And I'm like, great, well, check this out. In England, they have a strain that's out of control that's proving to be right now more deadly. You've got a strain out of control in Africa, and that strain is proving to be inefficient against the vaccine. So all of a sudden, I'm like, what's all this for? It all hit me in the face when one of my friends got the vaccine, and guess what they were told? They were told, quarantine and don't interact with people because you're still a carrier and you could still give it to other people. I'm like, then what's the purpose of the vaccine? Like, hey, guess what? We have vaccines and we've kept all of your attention on it, but don't worry, it's not going to alter your lifestyle at all.
So wait a minute.
That's very frustrating, by the way.
Are you saying that when you get the vaccine, you have to quarantine?
I'm saying that when you get the vaccine, they're telling you that you still need to social distance, you need to keep away from people.
Still wear masks.
You're like, almost all the rules still apply, so that you can now continue keeping everyone safe. I'm like, great. So this article from the Wall Street Journal was essentially saying that if we could just get the whole world vaccinated, this is probably going to work. But here's the problem. As long as there's domestic and international travel, you have people in third world countries that are not as organized. They're not getting their vaccines. They're not distributing them very effectively. And if the whole world's not really getting vaccinated, then it's going to prove to some extent to only be able to slow the problem. By the time you just get a handle on it, it's now mutated into multiple strains. Now we're needing vaccines for those things. In theory, this could keep the government shut down for a super long period of time. And what do you get? What do you get when you have a high percentage of people that can't work? You become a socialistic nation, because all of a sudden the government is telling you what you can and can't do. They're enforcing all of these rules, and now all of a sudden they have to send you money. Now they have to provide for your medical. And anyone right now that wants a socialistic nation, really honestly just one step away from communism, because that's already too much control over our lives, I'm not a fan of that person. Here's what I'll tell you what I am a fan of. I'm a fan of saying, this is your life, and we're creating all this freedom so that you can live it. You deserve to pursue that happiness. You deserve to make whatever choices that you really want. That is unfortunately not the world that my children are being raised in right now. We're being told what we can and can't do over this flu. And I get that it's kind of bad, but guess what? We're now imposing restrictions and restricting freedom across the board in all different parts of our lives. And collectively, it's heinous. Collectively, it is hurting. And I still have to ask, is the cure worse than the solution? Is it worse than the problem? And right now I look at it and I don't think I'm in a place to really be able to judge that and know, but it's hard for me not to really honestly criticize what's happening right now, because I know so many people whose lives are just on moratorium. It's not an eviction moratorium, it's a life moratorium. My life is on hold. I was telling my wife, they said that the Wall Street Journal, CDC came out and basically said, hey, you will probably have to experience for years to come intermittent travel bans and restrictions. And, personally, I love every month or so to travel somewhere in the world. And I'm like, wow, Glenn, for the next 4 or 5 years, we might not really be able to go a whole lot of anywhere except for maybe intercontinental. We could take a risk and go international here, hoping that borders don't get shut last minute or something crazy, happens. You don't get trapped on the other side of the world, because I know friends that's happened to on multiple occasions. I don't like the smell of what's happening right now. And I cannot help but feel that it is politically infused from the tolerance movement that wants to see equality for everyone. And listen carefully, I want equality for everyone as well. But in business, there's a difference between ideals and practicality. And we're not ready for all ideals without sometimes doing a far greater damage than good. And I personally think that, the way I add it up, there's a lot more hurt going down right now than needs to be because of the way people are choosing to take this. Take the conversation of targeted for just a moment. My dad is 78 years old. My dad just had a stroke this last week. It was really scary for our family. He had a couple of medications that weren't doing what they were supposed to. Fortunately, the amazing good doctors over 3 days were able to figure it out, get him regulated, didn't even need the permanent heart pacemaker in the end. And our dad came home to us. And it was beautiful to see the medical profession, just being bright and shining in the right direction. My parents have avoided COVID up into this point, right? They have quarantined. They have put their entire life on hold at their age. And I look at it and I say, you know what? I understand that we do need the politicians and the government involved to make sure that we can slow spread so that we don't overrun our hospitals, because that could lead, honestly, to anarchy, just total panic and a lack of total confidence. It could crash the stock market. So we do need government involvement to some extent. But beyond controlling the spread, I feel that there's powers at play far deeper than just controlling the spread, because if we were taking a target approach, here's what we do. Send money to people who lost jobs. Not everybody. Send help and relief to people that are at high risk and can't work. But don't shut down the economy. This whole blanket approach, to me, I think there's something quite harebrained about it.
Kris, I want to pivot this conversation a little bit. I think we're talking about some really awesome things, but let's bring it home. You good if we bring it home? I want to start talking a little bit more about taking control of our own financial life rather than relying on some other entity, whether it's the federal government, the state government, a rich daddy that finances how do we take control of our own financial life?
This is pre-COVID, pre-pandemic. People were already struggling with taking control of their life. All COVID did was make it more intense. And I think that people are reacting in one of two ways. You either have people waking up and realizing, oh my gosh, my self-sufficiency has been a really low priority, and I need to figure out how to reclaim my life. And if you look at the people who are struggling less, let's just call it what it is. People with money are struggling less. And everyone should be asking themselves, how do I create my own job security? How do I financially improve my life? How do I financially put myself in a position where I have options? My life has hardly been impacted by COVID on a personal level. My kids were already in private school, literally private as in at my house. I've got 2 teachers that come in, and my wife and I have been customizing their education because we believe we can do a superior job than the school system. And there are things that I want my children to know. I'm one of their teachers outside of the professional helpers that we pay for, has found a way to move forward. I think like many people that are listening or watching this. But the other kind of people out there are the people who have said, I've already put my life on hold and now it's becoming super apparent. And I either lean into the victimhood that I really have lost control and I'm waiting for someone else to make the government and the economy better so that I can start living again. Or you realize that it was always on you and that it's on you right now more than ever before. And I feel really fortunate. There's a lot of people that resonate with my message. They get in touch with me and they'll partner with me and I'll help them earn 30% plus ROI in the real estate game. Or I'll teach them one of 50 different side hustles and they will replace their job income or they'll supplement their income and they'll do something to say it's on me to produce the finances I need so that I have the options. You know, when I connect with people, dude, it's not about being rich. It is not about the mansion. It's not about the house on the hill. It's not about driving, a Lamborghini. What it really is at the end of the day is options. And more money always equals more options. And options for me is a coefficient of freedom. When we say that I want to be a free person, I know people that have all their freedom and don't leverage it because they've trapped themselves in a really tiny, small life. They can't see more than just a few inches ahead of themselves. They can only see a few options for how to live their life without realizing that they could break free and do anything that they want with their life. And number one excuse why we don't give ourselves permission because we don't have the money. So I've always been a huge proponent that if you really want to own all of the options available in your life, then you have to master the game of money. When people go to my website, when they read my books, when they connect with me, YouTube, Twitter, when they connect with me, every time I'm getting in front of the camera to share a message, it's always a message that says, here's something you need to know and act on that will put you in control of the driver's seat instead of somebody else. Because for most of us, other people are managing our financial lives. What we do, dude, we are in this hamster wheel working hard, many of us 40 hours a week. There's little money left over at the end of the day because that money is not just paying bills, it's going towards 401ks because someone said so. So I get the free match from my company. I'm putting money in an IRA because my CPA said I'll save, $28 in my taxes this year if I take the rest of my expendable income and stash it away in a place that I, can't touch without getting a 10% penalty swipe. Or I'll listen to my financial planner that says dump it in an annuity, or maybe I'll put it in these mutual funds, which, 92 of them cannot even perform at a break even, not at inflation. They don't cancel that out. So I look at this and I'm like, we are not people. We are sheeple. We are literally just following someone else's plan that is broken because it's never going to get us what we want. I mean, look at the plan if you're listening to this that you're financially following right now. Is it literally putting you on track? Can you mathematically prove to me that you will have all the money you need at the age that you want to retire? And if you're looking like, Kris, I don't know the first thing about producing that math, then you need to understand this. You are enrolled in someone's financial system. It's either your own of your making where you're in the driver's seat or somebody else's. So if you don't know the answers to these questions, you're literally living someone else's financial game plan. And I promise you this, they're benefiting, but you're not. I think this pandemic is a wake-up call to say, hello, anyone in there? Hello? Wake up. Take charge of your life and realize you can still have anything you want. Dude, there are people that are killing it during the pandemic with living a bigger life than they ever have before. I'm one of them, but I'm not alone. There are many people doing that. We owe it to ourselves to rely on ourselves to produce the life that we want. And I want to share one last thought on that. That doesn't mean you do it alone. It means that you have to trade your friends that make the same money that you do, and that you have to trade the government that you're hoping will fix things, and an employer that cuts you your check and has you on the financial teat. And you trade that for something different. You trade that for a mastermind of mentors that already have what you want. You get in proximity to people who have already achieved your goals and your dreams. You get in proximity of people that have the systems and the connections, the relationships, and the ways of making that happen, and then you just do what they do. You get in their airspace, you learn from them, and then you mimic them. Some people think R&D stands for research and development. It is rip off and duplicate. As in copy, copy, copy. All I ever invite people to do is I go out there, I'll find today 100th new way of making money, and then I'll say, here it is, copy what I'm doing so that you can have not more money, not that mansion on a hill, you can have options. The options that you've wanted to that can lead to not just your goals being met, but your dreams.
How do you do it? How do you get yourself into a better airspace? You're surrounded with people that don't have, good beliefs surrounding money. How do you get yourself out of that?
Yeah. I believe there are some things in life that are worth mastering. And I've mastered a lot of different things in my life. I've mastered sales. If we're talking about Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours, I've mastered the game of finance and real estate and money, investment and business. I've mastered the game of my body, like learning how to predictably get my body to be what I want it to be. I've mastered the game in my relationships, with my wife over the last 19 years of really producing the relationship that we want. So there's all these things to master. Nothing is more important than mastering the game of change. When you want something and don't have it, the only way to get it is change. And there's a lot of negative change out there. There's a lot of wrong change, but make no mistake, change is the only way you're going to get it. So we should all be pursuing, how do I change myself to become a new creature? How do I change myself to produce something that I couldn't before? How do I change myself to become the person worthy where their goals and dreams effortlessly have to come about? And that's the game that we got to get into. So if you study this game of change, one of the first components is you got to hang around change makers. You got to hang out with people that are embracing the game of change and they're always in the game of change. There are thought leaders, there are influencers, there are mentors. And I don't mean coach. There's a big difference between a coach and a mentor. You see, a coach has not achieved the result that you want. They just know how to run the drills and the practice and in theory, give you advice that can get you there. A mentor, on the other hand, is a person that already has what you want. And so if you take a look at the difference between, Phil Jackson and Michael Jordan, Phil Jackson could never beat Michael Jordan in a one-on-one game. Not at his prime, not at his best of best. So he's a really great coach. He's got outside perspective, he knows the drills, and he can give them that perspective, and he serves a really valuable role. But at the end of the day, I'm just kind of curious, if you could have one day with your basketball mentor, would you want to be coached by Phil Jackson or Michael Jordan? My guess is you might want to get the perspective of the person that had the talent that actually went all the way and made it and got there. In the game of business, that's equivalent to you studying from someone that says, I've got a PhD in business. In theory, I understand business. No, I've never made $1 million in business. I haven't made $10 million in business. I never
started a single
I never
company.
started a single business. Or you could mentor with the business owner that says, yeah, I'm on my 7th round of starting multi-million-dollar businesses and it's now a system and I know how to do it. I'm always going to go to the person with the real life experience that already has what I want. So when you say, how do you do it? First of all, you've got to embrace the game of change because most resist it, most hate it, most fight from it, flee from it. Once you embrace that change is the path to get where you want to go, the second step is then to find the person you want to change with. Who is that mentor, not coach, that already has what you got? And how do you build a relationship with them where they will give it to you? Because that is always going to be the fastest path to getting where you want to go. I'll give you one last analogy on this. You have a child, just came back from the doctor and found out that your child has a terminal illness. And your child will die in 12 months. But there's an experimental procedure. And if you had $1 million, you could pay for this non-insurance covered experimental procedure that could save your kid's life. Now, if you couldn't fundraise, if you couldn't just get the money from charity and from the hearts of good people, but you had to earn it, what would you do? Would you, A, reapply to go back to college for higher learning, or B, go find a mentor that knows how to make millions of dollars that will take you under their wing and show you step by step how to do it in under a year? I'm not going to college. I'm certainly not going to read books. I'm going to go find someone that has a track record and knows how to do it. And then I am going to track them down, get an arrangement with them, and then I'm going to learn everything that I can from them. I'm going to study and implement everything, because the ability for me to do my part to save my child's life comes down to how well I can do just that. Fortunately, most of us, unfortunately, don't have the motivation to do that, because there's a lot of talk in this world. But once in a while, I meet someone who's a true seeker, who really not just says they want to have it all, but they mean it. And that person will find a mentor, enlist themselves somehow with them, and then they'll roll. That's the fastest path.
Let's take this example you just gave, Kris, put a little bit of a twist on it. I want to do a game with you.
Okay.
So there is an opportunity happening here, regardless of who we voted for, the president, all the politics that we just discussed.
Yeah.
There is a high likelihood that there will be a lump of cash showing up in people's bank accounts that wasn't there before.
Yep.
In fact, most people have had 2 of these already.
Yep.
So let's take Kris Krohn. Let's pretend we wipe out all of your wealth right now.
Yeah.
Wipe
And all I get is a $1,400 or $2,000 check in the mail?
Yeah.
Like, what do I do that's different?
What would Kris Krohn do with that? You're at nothing. You and Colin have
Yeah.
a cardboard box in downtown Salt Lake. That's it.
Yeah.
No phone, no previous connections. What does Kris Krohn do
In
with
that moment?
$2,000 of stimulus?
In that moment, I would realize that I can snap my fingers and consume that money and it'll be gone. Or I can invest it. Every person that wants to master the game of finance must master the game of ROI. Stands for return on investment. And it is the common denominator to compare any opportunity against itself. So I could take that $2,000, for example, and I could put that into typical retirement, 401ks, IRA, stock market. I'm going to average, my blended return is going to be 6%. And $2,000 growing at 6% will double in 14 years. Which means that in the next 30 years, I'm going to wind up with $5,000. And the question is, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, will that give me what I want in 30 years? No, that is a laughable joke, and that's how hard I laugh anytime someone says that they're only using a blend of single-digit ROI to get where they want to go. A master of ROI does not play around with single-digit ROI, which may be considered safe, but broken, because it's guaranteed to never be enough.
Not only that, Kris, you can't eat your IRA.
No, it doesn't produce a cash flow.
What are you going to
doesn't
live
produce
on
a
right
tax
now?
benefit.
Like if that's
Yeah.
legit, your starting point.
So here's what I learned. I learned, first of all, that if I could elevate from a single-digit ROI to a double-digit, like in real estate, I've got a track record on $1 billion of real estate of earning 25% ROI. To just go from 6% to 25% only seems like it's 4 times higher ROI. But in truth, a 25% ROI, because of compound interest, over a 20-year period of time will produce 26 times more money, which is why Albert Einstein said, we've never created anything financially as powerful as compound interest. So here's what I'm saying. Compounding interest is powerful, but not on single-digit ROI. You got to graduate to double-digit. But from there, I go to triple-digit, quadruple-digit ROI. I do this through business. So I do what wealthy people do. I invest in real estate, in other words, assets that pay me money along the way, or I invest in business that pays me money along the way, except in business, that active income compared to the real estate passive income can grow even exponentially faster. So I could trade $2,000. So if I had $2,000,
yeah.
I have found and proven 50 side hustles, 50 little businesses that take less than $1,000 to start, and all of them have the ability to replace your job income. If you're earning less than $100,000 a year, I've got 85% confidence I can replace your job with just any one of these 50 side hustles. So if I had $2,000 and I was living in a box downtown Salt Lake, yeah, I would start one of these side hustles, and within 30 days, I would have enough money to get an apartment that I could rent, put money consistently on the table, and get some clothes put back on the body. That's 100% what I would do. And by the way, I've helped over 1,000 people since the pandemic hit do just that, because some of them lost their job and I saw the need for that. And some of them said, I need to supplement my income, or you know what, I just don't have the job security that I once thought I did, and I need to produce my own job security. So I help people start business. I help them invest in real estate. Bottom line is, what do you do with that money? Don't consume it, invest it. Don't put it in single digit ROI. You should look to double, triple, and quadruple ROI. And if you get good at that game, then you can hang out with me or subscribe to my YouTube channel where I teach you how to master the game of infinite ROI, which means literally creating money out of thin air. It means you don't need anything to create a whole bunch of money. And that is probably my favorite game because it means that you're creating so much value in the world that you don't even need money to make money.
So Kris, are you of the persuasion that everyone, even if you've got a good job, that everyone should have some sort of side hustle?
I think one of the biggest financial mistakes that we don't understand is that we are habituated to believe that it is okay to earn all of our income in a single source. Mm-hmm. And that's a problem. If you don't have money coming in from at least 5 different sources, then you should be proactively saving money and investing it into things that produce alternative sources of income. If you don't have multiple streams of income, I mean, let's face it, 30 years ago, you could get by with a single source of income. Since then, you need at least 2 sources of income. Now people are stretched and needing 3. Guess where we're gonna be in 20 years? If you don't have 5 or 6 sources of income, that means that you're literally gonna have Americans with 3 jobs. And they're gonna work just to sustain all of this thing that we have called life. And I'm just saying, man, get ahead of the curve. Best thing you can do is save your money and get it invested or learn how to borrow other people's money, OPM, put that to work. Bottom line, do what wealthy people do. Copy the wealthy and then become wealthy. Now you gotta be smart, you gotta be intelligent, you gotta have a good mentor, you gotta make sure that you're avoiding the traditional pitfalls and trial and error. But right now, you get a stimulus check in the mail, don't consume it.
Kris, I think this is the year for people to be really, really smart. And if this stimulus money comes through, people should do the right thing with it. I agree with you 100%. Don't consume it. Put it into something that works. If you are interested in some side hustles, we honestly have dozens of really amazing side hustles that can be another source of income for you immediately. Real estate takes time. These side hustles can start generating income how quickly, Kris?
Literally days. It's measured in days. And for anyone that's listening to this, all of my books on what these side hustles are and how to get them, all of my books on real estate, how to invest, all about winning the game of money. Right now, because of the pandemic, I'm making all of that available for free. So if you just go to kriskrohn.com, you just got to spell it right with the double K, KRISKROHN. If you go to kriskrohn.com, I've got all of my free resources there because right now you need to get yourself educated and then don't hesitate once you've educated to implement because execution is everything, like my mentor Tony Robbins says. And right now, it is time to execute.